Today on CityCast Denver. The Broncos are wrapping up yet another losing season this Saturday, but the real juicy football drama is just starting to get good.
They could either have a couple $1 million of income a year, or they could have about $500 million a piece right now, because you take the $5 billion, whatever it's going to be sold for, and divide that by 7. That's why some of the kids say, I don't want to back Brittany. I want this thing to myself right now, because $1 million this year, sure, that's great. How about 700, 500 million? That sounds better.
Zach Stevens and Ryan Koenigsberg of the DNVR Broncos podcast are on the show today to break down the Broncos' imminent ownership transfer and explain how we got here. Today is Wednesday, January 5th, 2022. I'm Bree Davies, and this is CityCast Denver.
That's smart to have a backup system like this in place. The worst thing is to get to the end of a podcast and realize something went wrong.
It's pretty much our worst nightmare. Like, oh, we have no show.
Got to rehash everything we just said and pretend like it's fresh and original and laugh at all the stupid jokes.
Well, Ryan Koenigsberg and Zach Stevens, welcome to CityCast Denver.
Thanks for having us. It's awesome to be on.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So all season, we've been seeing these stories about the Broncos potentially being sold, and there's all sorts of wild rumors. So I wanted you guys to help me understand what's happening. Where exactly are we right now with this potential sale of the Broncos?
Well, I'll start here. Before the season, Joe Ellis, who's the president of the Broncos, came out and essentially said, at some point after the season, before next season, this team will be sold. And that's actually kind of rare. So we know that a sale is going to happen, or I guess a transfer of ownership, to be completely correct there. He didn't say a sale exactly. So, of course, that keeps the door open for the Bolin children to still sneak in there. But most people are assuming that that is going to be a sale that is going to take place at some point in the offseason.
Okay, and you just mentioned the name Bolin, and that's referring to the former owner of the Broncos, Pat Bolin, and he passed away in 2019, but his family drama is kind of at the root of this sale. Can you go back a little bit and tell me more about who Pat Bolin was and what his legacy really means to this team?
Right. I'll take this over. So 3 decades ago, Pat Bolin bought the Denver Broncos for like $100 million. And it was a risky thing for him to do back then. He was a guy that obviously had a lot of money, but he wasn't a billionaire 30 years ago that could just throw money around and not care about his investment. He really, really cared about the Denver Broncos, and pretty much all of his money, maybe even sometimes more than he could afford, went into the Broncos. And so that's kind of one of the reasons why he was such a beloved owner and so loved in Denver, was because he not only embraced Denver, he embraced the Broncos, and his whole thing was, I want to do everything to win. And when you're a fan, I mean, that's all you can ask for from an owner, is be a good person and then also do everything you can to win and support the community, which is what Pat Bolin did.
A Super Bowl championship for John Elway and the Denver Broncos. There's one thing I want to say here tonight. There's only 4 words. This one's for John.
And Denver will become the 6th franchise in NFL history to win back-to-back Super Bowls.
When you hear the stories about Pat Bolin, all you hear is good things. You know, he knew the names of, the kids of the janitor who worked the building. I wrote a story a couple of years ago about how the team had told their team chiropractor that he could only have 1 ticket to the Super Bowl. So he wasn't going to be able to bring his family. And, Pat Bolin was talking to him one day while he was getting worked on and was like, so, like, are you bringing all the kids out? And they're like, oh, no, they told me I could only have 1 ticket. And he was like, oh, no, that is not how we're doing this. You tell me how many tickets you need. I got you covered.
Well, and I'm going to say this, and you would not want me to say this, but this one's for Pat.
And then sometime in the 2000s, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And so he set up a trust, and there were different versions of this trust that continued to change over the years. And then, of course, the Broncos changed ownership from Pat Bowlen having day-to-day control to the trust taking over. And then, of course, Pat passed away a couple of years ago, and nothing changed then with the ownership of the team.
And I guess I'll have to be the bearer of bad news. Pat Bowlen was incredible, and he did a lot of really great things for the Broncos and honestly for the city as a whole. The Pat Bowlen Trust is not one of his shining moments. It was not very well thought out, in my opinion, and basically what he did was he appointed 3 different people, Joe Ellis and essentially 2 lawyers, and said, okay, your job is to make a decision of which one of my 7 children is most fit to own the team once they're, all old enough to potentially do that. And on top of that, then you had a lot of the kids who, didn't necessarily even really present themselves as an option. And then the final ones there, obviously it started to become a bit of like a Game of Thrones situation where everyone wants the throne.
So that's kind of part of the issue here is like we can't get everybody on the same page. How did the family respond to that arrangement that he had made with the trust?
Well, it kind of started to trickle out more so, unfortunately, as Pat's health declined, and obviously at this point he didn't have the position with the Broncos in terms of day-to-day operations, and that's when the trust was in control, and so we started to see things trickle out. And I think the big first step, and Ryan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, was Beth Bowlen coming out, and now also to throw a couple more things in here. There's 2 different moms in this family. Pat Bowlen had 2 different families, and so that's there. Some of the kids are in one of the marriages, some are in the other. It seems like at times they can all get along, and they're all one big happy family. But that's kind of where the divide is between these 2 different families going into it. And so the first one, Beth, she's older, and she was part of his first wife's family. And the first thing that kind of came out was she made a statement. I would like to put myself out there to be the next owner of the Denver Broncos. And she had worked for the Broncos in the past, not in any major roles. And the Broncos responded pretty much the next day. And what they said was, what you said about being qualified is not true. You are not qualified. You are never going to be qualified. Essentially, that was the start, because then how did Beth feel about that? Well, she did not like it. It was embarrassing. The Broncos did not mince their words. They sent a very clear message, and that's kind of, to me, where all the drama started.
And right around that time, rumors started to matriculate as to why would the Broncos come out and say that. And there was different stuff, I guess unconfirmed, in terms of when she did work for the team, she wasn't very well liked around the building. Again, rumors here, wasn't showing up for work on time, kind of walked around the place like, my dad was the owner. Like, what are you going to do? Fire me? So again, those are some of the things that had come out.
Oh, messy.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about Joe Ellis again, because he seems to be the main decider in all of this. What does he want?
Well, he said that he doesn't want to do this anymore. He's getting up there in age. He's been a part of the Broncos organization for a very long time. And the reason why I guess it's unprecedented is he didn't say the team was for sale. You've heard that in the past, where a team is up for sale and the bidding process begins, but he wasn't ready, I guess, to rule out Brittany Bowlen, who is really the only one we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the kids that's been very much in the news in this story.
Well, I guess the most important thing to know about her is she's really young, just into her early 30s now. And that would just be, that's the number one hurdle that I think was always going to be there for her is the timeline wasn't lining up. I've joked about it on our show. Like there's already very little diversity in NFL ownership circles. Like a young woman all of a sudden being in there, first of all, would be awesome. But it's just it seems unlikely. The other owners have to approve this stuff.
Oh, really?
And
So other owners of teams have a stake in what happens with the Broncos.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah, they can essentially vote no to someone coming in and being an NFL owner. And there's all these rules and stuff.
Yeah, and really quick, just, I mean, the biggest qualification that she doesn't have, like Ryan was saying, was the age, and then also just the experience as well, not just in the NFL, but the experience in terms of being a business person. Brittany doesn't have that, and she is extremely qualified for her age, and again, that's just what's going to hold her back, is for her age. And by the way, she doesn't have a couple $2 billion to be able to spend right now on her own. But she went to Notre Dame, then she got her MBA at Duke, then she went and worked at a consulting company, and for the past couple of years, she has worked with the Broncos. Now she's a senior vice president with the Broncos. She is everything I've heard. She is like her dad in terms of the way she treats people. Although being a Bolin member, you don't find that with billionaires' kids sometimes. She treats everyone with respect, and she's actually led the Broncos COVID operation for these past couple of years, and she's done a fantastic job with that. She has passed every test with flying colors.
Yeah.
Just the thing is that's going to hold her back from truly taking ownership and being the owner of the Broncos is 6 of the other kids, or I shouldn't say all 6 of them, but not all 7 kids want the team to be passed to her, because what does that mean? Well, it still means that they'll get income from the team, but they could either have a couple $1 million of income a year, or they could have about $500 million a piece right now, because you take the $5 billion, whatever it's going to be sold for, and divide that by 7. That's why some of the kids say, I don't want to back Brittany. I want this thing to myself right now, because $1 million this year, sure, that's great. How about 700, 500 million? That sounds better.
And here's the elephant in the room is that, the Broncos are bad now. And this is a proud franchise in the history of the league. It's really, when it comes to a team that isn't on either coast or the Cowboys, this is one of the more popular franchises in the NFL. And all of a sudden they're in disarray. And, when Pat Bowlen was the day-to-day owner of the Denver Broncos, they never had back-to-back losing seasons. That's over 30 years of time. They never had back-to-back losing seasons. If they were bad one year, he was going to do whatever it took the next year to make them good again. And here we are sitting on the heels of 5 consecutive losing seasons. Something is very wrong with a franchise that isn't used to this, at least not since, the 70s. And the NFL, we can guess, is saying, hey, we got to do something about this. So they are likely putting more pressure on the team to get this figured out.
This episode is brought to you by Choir League. Choir League presents Sing and Shout, an unforgettable afternoon celebrating the powerful legacy of African American spirituals, the foundation of all American music. On Sunday, May 4th at 3:30 p.m., join Lonnie Norwood, gospel singer and teacher from the South Side of Chicago, for a workshop and performance with Choir League. Lonnie will guide folks through this powerful American art form, where it came from, and how it informed American music that came after it. You can buy tickets now on Eventbrite and enjoy the show with Lonnie, but you can also join Choir League. The group meets weekly for practice at local breweries and distilleries. Singers can sign up for 6 to 8 week sessions, and there's always a performance at the end of each cycle. There's no audition to join and no experience necessary. Tickets for the May 4th show with Lonnie Norwood are on sale now at Eventbrite. Just check the link in our show notes. For more information on the program and joining the choir, visit choirleague.com or email info@choirleague.com. A few months ago, there were rumors about potential buyers like Peyton Manning, John Elway, Jeff Bezos, and Jay-Z even. Are any of those realistic?
The one that, everyone wants to hear, and the one that I actually believe is realistic, is Peyton Manning. Now, Peyton Manning himself is not rich enough to buy an NFL team. So that's where, I guess it gets a little bit cloudy for the NFL. The NFL would much prefer some mega billionaire to come in, write a check and take the team, than what would have to take place with Peyton Manning, which is an ownership group. And essentially that's, Peyton Manning and all of his rich friends pool together money and they own the team. Maybe Peyton has a small stake, however much he can afford. And then he is the figurehead for that group that represents the team. And I think that is a possibility in this very specific case more than it would be in other cases, because the NFL loves Peyton Manning. He's
Yeah.
the perfect representation for them at any level. They want him involved in every single way they can. So while they normally would just say like, no, we want Bezos to just come in, write a check, it's done. We don't have to worry about them putting together a board and voting and this, that, and the other thing. But the combination of the NFL's love for Peyton Manning and Denver's love for Peyton Manning creates a specific scenario where I think they would say, hey, this actually is the best case scenario for ownership in Denver. And we're on board with this.
So, so where are we with negotiations? I would love to hear predictions from you guys on what you think is next.
Well, I think it's pretty clear now. We've seen some things kind of trickle out over the season, even though it's still been very quiet on the public front. We've seen some things where the Broncos and the Trust have been talking to investment banks and have been talking about people to kind of get the process started of selling. We've heard John Elway's name. Like you said, Jay-Z and Bezos' name have also been out there as well. And what I think this is setting up for is a very big bid for this team. I think this is going to be a very competitive process, and I do think that it's going to move on from the Bolin family, and I think it's something that for selling a $4 to $5 to $6 billion organization is going to happen relatively quick. I think we get the official word in the next couple of weeks, if not a month, and then by the time the Broncos season starts, I think they have a new owner.
Well, Ryan and Zach, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having us on.
Yeah, this was great.
You guys, that was so good.
Yeah, this is wildly fascinating.
Yeah,
What an incredible show.
I mean, we could go all day. We didn't even get to the part where we randomly found out about another child in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Another Bolin child?
Yep.
Yeah, well, yes, another Bolin child from another woman.
Yep. That the rest of the kids didn't know about for a long time, and
until like the funeral, right?
Yeah. They're like, who is this? Who is this eighth person on Dad's will? Oh, I guess we should probably tell you.
And here's what else is happening in Denver today. 1 in 4 Denverites who have been tested are showing up positive for COVID-19 in Denver, according to Mayor Hancock yesterday. Denverite reports that this comes as city officials have extended the indoor mask mandate through February 3rd. Oh, and did I mention the mayor currently has COVID? And so do I. And so does my baby. And we were all vaxxed and boosted and masked. But I digress. The stock show is starting next week after taking the year off due to, but it's off to a rocky start. Yesterday, organizers canceled the annual kickoff parade through the streets of Denver, saying it was too cold for the animals. The actual stock show, however, is still tentatively going forward as planned. While masks are required for indoor events, the stock show has received an exemption and won't be requiring proof of vaccination. Because, of course. That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed the show, why not take a minute to tell a friend about us, rate the show wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See you later. Was that okay? Okay, should I do it again?